About a year ago, I made a short video about NHS whistleblowers, and I referenced in that video how the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Jeremy Hunt, had frittered £10 million in an attempt to silence one particular doctor, Dr. Raj, and then settled for £1 million. That's £11 million thrown away. And we need to be spending the money that we are paying in taxes. We need to be spending that money wisely. We need to be spending it on helping people to recover, helping people in the NHS, rather than hijacking the law to hide the errors of corrupt or stupid bureaucrats. And they may be in the NHS, they may be in government, they may be in the legal system, but the problem is, it seems to me that there's an effort to silence anybody who speaks out, anybody who asks for information. And I would urge you, if you know of these things, to sort of speak out, to get the ball rolling, because it doesn't matter what the subject is, whether this is about post office failure, whether this is about educational failure, whether this is about the failure of the trains, or whether it's about the failure of NHS bureaucracy. It's all about the efforts that the system will go to prevent the truth coming out and prevent us discovering that the people who are running things, the people who are lording it over us, seem to have no idea about what they're doing. I'm not suggesting that they are definitely corrupt. They might well be. But I am suggesting they are incompetent. And more time, more money, more effort is being wasted in trying to cover up that stupidity than in trying to get things right in the first place. And indeed, than in trying to put things right. If you just go back and think, how long has it taken for the post office sub-postmasters and sub-postmistresses to get any sort of justice? And even now, the government is trying to fob them off with £75,000, where many of them are paid out over £200,000. What is £75,000 then? And their lives lost, their lives wasted, 20 years of their lives wasted because of this nonsensical bureaucracy. And even now, the government is still trying to sort of sleight of hand suggest that compensation is a cover-all for reimbursing these people for the money that was taken from them illegally, and then giving them some sort of redress. Now, these are actually two different things. And then exonerating them. 3 things. And then prosecuting and bringing to justice the people who have trampled all over their good reputation. And it doesn't stop there. Windrush is another example of stupid bureaucracy, at that time presided over by Mrs. May, but she ducked the bullet there and made Amber Rudd. Is it Amber Rudd? Yeah. Amber Rudd. Suddenly I thought, Amber Rudd, but surely, short, and I was confusing her with Mr. Raab. Amber Rudd to take the blame for that, to take the fall for that. It was on Mrs. May's watch that all that paper was shredded and all the information lost. Again, the Home Office and Home Office bureaucracy. And the haemophilia, the blood contamination crisis. Years and years and years. Decades have gone by, and still people have not been properly compensated and properly assured that the government, that our country takes these people seriously. And that fundamentally is the issue. The people in Parliament are sitting there because we have elected them, and they are there to represent us. And the courts are there to represent us. You know, it's the in the case of in the case of a criminal trial, the criminal test is made by not by a judge, not by a barrister, not by a solicitor. They all want lots of money. No, it's made by a jury who decide that something is beyond all reasonable doubt. Yes, they are guided by the professionals. In the end, it's the people who make the decision. And sometimes they're prevented from doing that by the conniving efforts of bureaucrats, pen pushers, and people who know they've made mistakes and will do anything they possibly can to hide their stupidity. Now, I'm going to play the other little film that I made, and because I think it picked a moment in time. It was a moment from last year, so I reference other things from last year, but I think the issue is quite well established. And as I say, I would love you to get back in touch with me if you can help, because I think this is a very broad campaign, and it needs to be brought to a head. It needs to be dealt with. It needs this chaos of legal lugubriosity. That's it. Lugubrious. That's the word. Lugubrious. Limousine. Lugubriosity. That's it. There we are. We've got it. And the obfuscation, and the attempt to dim the lights, to apply the limousine lugubriosity of limited luminosity by a languid lacuna of legal Lilliputians. There we are. That's a lot of L's, isn't it? That will help somewhere. Have a look at the film. Is there criminality? Is there law breaking at the heart of the NHS? I have been looking into this. I want to know more about what's going on. There are active cases. In fact, I'm following the case of an NHS England whistleblower and the legal defence in his case to defend harassment. The legal defence by the NHS is that his contract is not contractual. What an extraordinary statement. This is the statement made in court. It's clearly a laughable defence, but for some reason it has been accepted. I don't understand why. Now, when we look at his contract is not contractual. Clearly this is a case that needs to be reviewed at the highest level. If an Uber driver is an employee, according to the Supreme Court, how could an NHS employee not be an employee? It's in the name. This is just one of a number of cases in the NHS that's being suppressed, and there's a history of giving false evidence by leading bureaucrats in the system. There is a history. And the usual system of evasion and delay is being used to undermine any progress in these cases. Think of Jeremy Hunt's dictum. It's mentioned in the Freedom to Speak Up review of delay, defend, and deny. Delay, defend, deny. And of course, Mr. Hunt is now the Chancellor of the Exchequer. And whether he realises it or not, he's also the personal saviour, the personal champion of spoonerism. What he has managed for Miss Malaprop, similarly, perhaps without even being conscious of his involvement, he has also managed, it would appear, for legal obfuscation. It's very impressive. But this behaviour, I think, undermines trust and seriously compromises the way in which our country, and the health service in particular, can function in the future. And it seems that the trail of misdirection and misdeeds genuinely goes to the top.
And I think Mr. Hunt has serious questions to answer. Just how much is he personally involved? Where Kwasi Kwarteng offered the biggest package in history, maybe it could be argued that Jeremy Hunt offers a sweeping sleight of hand that would put anybody in the magic circle to shame. Mr. Hunt has direct control of NHS budgets, and particularly of those budgets for legal aid, for the legal cases, for fueling and funding the legal cases against whistleblowers. It's very worrying. Now let's look at a parallel. Dan Needle was able to track down the Nadim Zahawi story because he was not hampered by the traditional media gatekeepers, by the pressures of traditional MSM, mainstream media. That's an acronym I've only just learned. Mainstream media. Even so, he had, there was a documentary the other day. He had the traditional frightener letters telling him to back away. He didn't, and it's clear that whatever explanation Mr. Zahawi may still provide, and we wait to hear what that might be, there is something that needs explaining. It cannot be dismissed. Dan Needle has found something. I feel the same concerns can be expressed about the whistleblowers who have experienced and witnessed serious abuse in the NHS. The knee-jerk response by the NHS has been for them to be dismissed, along with the most bizarre legal defence that an NHS contract is not contractual. We need to get to the bottom of what appears to be an abuse of power, because this is going to suck the lifeblood out of the NHS. Let me give you an example. Another example. £10 million was spent by Jeremy Hunt when he was chief executive of the NHS resolution. £10 million was spent by him to silence Dr. Raj Mattu, a cardiologist who raised disclosures about patients dying unnecessarily. And it was finally settled for £1 million. Now, how many nurses and doctors, how many nurses and doctors, how much equipment could be purchased with just a fraction of that money? £10 million wasted in a legal quest to stop a whistleblower. The problem is that sort of bullying is rife. You know, we've now got bullying allegations that are outstanding against Mr. Raab. The questions hovering around Mr. Zahawi are also the sort of questions that are threaded through the NHS, the police force, and education. You know, it's all about elitism and arrogance and hiding. Our systems are collapsing because of the network of favours and glad handing that may just amount to preference, but it may also hide serious corruption and criminality. We need to see some light in this darkness. We need to find a way. We need to cut through the obfuscation. And we need questions answered. Now, it may be that Mr. Hunt has perfectly good explanations. It may be that Mr. Zahawi has perfectly good explanations, but the silence is deafening at the moment. We need explanations. And we need the cases which are outstanding and which are being frustrated. We need those cases to be opened. We need them to be heard now.
So please, I urge you to get in touch if you think you can help. And I think this matter, the issue particularly of the NHS whistleblowers, needs to be brought to some sort of conclusion. We need to get the legal system to listen to those people who know what they're talking about, those people who are blowing the whistle. They shouldn't be silenced, they should be listened to. And heard, and then maybe we can do a bit of good.